welcome to Bad Music Taste and Other Ways to Ruin Your Life. My name is Dominic.
And my name is Sam.
Sam has our record this week.
This week's record is The Wild Heart by Stevie Nicks. This record was originally released in 1983 on Modern Records. The copy I have here is on black vinyl. But anyways, today we're talking to author Nancy Barile. How's it going, Nancy?
It's going great, and I love it that you have Stevie up there. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, before we did Record of the Week, we used to do fun facts. And but we wanted to like nobody ever commented on it. And then I remember like a few weeks ago we talked to Ian Mackay.
I saw that.
Yeah, and he was like, "What is the significance of Record of the Week?"
Sounds like Ian. Yeah.
So you have a new book out called I'm Not Holding Your Coat. So what made you want to write a book in the first place?
I mean, I always wanted to write a book ever since I was a little kid. And I used to, I got to telling stories on Facebook a lot, in some of the hardcore and punk groups. And people would comment and they would tell me like, "Oh, you're a great storyteller. You should write a book. These are great stories. Write a book. And so one day I just sat down and did it.
Yeah, I mean, we both love reading and just literature in general, so I think that's really cool.
That's awesome. Who's your favorite book author? What do you have one? Put you on the spot.
I don't know. I would say I'm between The Outsiders by S.E.N., which is like a classic, or The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Sprouse. I love that book.
So good. Yes.
I'm gonna sound like a jackass, but I've only seen Perks of Being a Wallflower. I've never read it.
Yeah, the book is better. The book is better, as is usually the case, But yeah, you should definitely read the book. The book is really, really good.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, I'm an English teacher, so I have I have an interest in that kind of thing. What kids like and what kids like to read. I always usually ask, when I'm around kids, I'm like, "What are you reading? What do you like?" So then I can take it and steal it and do it with my kids.
I'm making my way through the Bad Religion book.
Oh, good for you!
Yeah,
excellent. Yeah, nice.
And by the same author, I really loved Keith Morris's book.
Yes, I haven't read that yet, but it is on my Christmas list. So I'm dying. And if you haven't read the book by the two guys in MDC. They're a little crazy, but you can handle them, but they're really good too. They're really good books. Yeah.
Yeah. Jim Ruland for the Bad Religion one and the Keith Morris book, he sat down and wrote it with both of them.
Yeah.
So
very cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, my selections aren't as cool, but I was a total poser in the Harry Potter world and only watching movies. So I'm going through the books currently now, so that's fun. And then in school, a lot of our lessons have been Edgar Allen Poe based, which is very awesome. So
very awesome, yes.
Wasn't he from Baltimore?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and he has something to do with Boston as well, because it's like a little plaque in this really obscure place near where I used to work that it's like Edgar Allen Poe lived here, slept here, something.
Yeah, he was either born in Baltimore or buried in Baltimore, something like that.
I think he might have died in Baltimore. Yeah. Yeah. My niece is from Baltimore. She lives in Baltimore now. She's and we all say it like that. Baltimore. If you're from Philly, that's how you say it. She lives in Cockeysville. Do you know where that is?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. She lives right there. Yeah. Got married there and everything.
Yeah, my mom is I think she's from Lansdale.
Oh, no kidding.
And
that's
then
the next town over from me in where I grew up. Yeah.
Yeah, I was reading the book to myself, and she was like, "She's from Philly."
Yeah. Where'd your mom go to high school?
I don't know, which is something I should know.
You shouldn't. No, actually, you shouldn't. It's okay.
So I'm kind of going back to what you were talking about with your book. What would you say went behind the writing process for you? Was it kind of easier, or did it take some time?
it did take a lot longer than I thought it would. I figured like, you're just going to sit down. I'm just going to like type all this out and it's all going to come to me. And a lot of it is kind of like, I do think I'm a natural storyteller. In my family, storytelling was a really valued skill. Like if you walked in my house and you said like, yo, I got a story, everybody would like gather around, they wanted to hear it. And so, and if even on the phone, I could call my dad and be like, Dad, wait till you hear this, So if you could, you sort of hone that skill growing up. And so sitting down and writing it was one thing, but then you got to go through and you've got to fact check everything. And so there were things that I remembered, thought I remembered them, crystal clear. And then, the editor would come back and say, well, actually, like I talked about a TV show, for instance, and I said that my husband and I used to talk about it. And he was like, that TV show wasn't out in 1982. Now, in my memory, I remember that, but I must have been doing it from when I moved up here. So, memory is fallible. And I had to talk to a lot of my friends. Luckily, I still am friends with a lot of the people that I hung out with in Philadelphia, even though it's been almost 40 years. And so, they helped fill in a lot of blanks. My friend Chuck Meehan, Shava, Lisa Hahn, Carol, Frank Moriarty, like these, I just, I was like, hey, what really happened here? Like, am I right when I remember this, So, and the members of Sadistic Exploits helped me out a lot. And then you have an editor who goes through and says, well, you're not telling me enough here. You said this, but like, people want to know, and I'm like, okay, and then there's some things that are kind of hard to talk about. My father was really strict with us growing up. And, if we disappointed him or did something wrong, we got whacked, and like nowadays that's, back then that was Tuesday night, but nowadays that's like, oh my God, your father's abusive. And so like, I really didn't want to even like talk about that kind of stuff, so that's kind of hard too. So, but it's remembering all that stuff and those good times, it was exhilarating, it was really kind of thrilling to go back and like relive the best times of your life, and the time, I fell in love with my husband. And so it's like, just regenerates all those awesome feelings, and that's fun.
Yeah, I mean, I know my favorite part about like family time or just like holiday time especially is when everybody comes over and you're sitting down eating dinner and they all start telling these stories about like oh, when we were kids or when your mom was a kid. Like that's my favorite part because you just get
say
to
you
know.
like that. That's interesting,
Yeah,
I would think most kids would be bored by that, but I'm glad that you like that.
I like it because I learn more. Like even if my grandmother's telling the story, I learn about my mom and dad while she's telling it. Like I get to know everybody more.
Yes, that is awesome. I'm really glad to hear that. That's really sweet.
Yeah, my dad like one time was like, oh, and then I saw Green Day. It's like, oh, where did you see Green Day? He was like, oh, 1994 Woodstock. like, like he was like in the mud fight.
Yeah, wow. And you didn't know that before you
No,
said that, right?
until like a year or two ago.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah, he like lived like an hour away, and they were showing it on TV, and he saw that they like broke down the fence, so he and his friends like drove there with a tent so they could stay for like 2 or 3 days.
Very cool. Yeah.
And that night, like they got there just in time for Green Day, and then they were gonna watch like Red Hot Chili Peppers and Metallica. The porta potties fell over, so their tent got like flushed away. So
yeah,
they drove home then.
They drove home. He's lucky he was only an hour away. Yeah, and things got a little ugly at Woodstock, later on.
Yeah, he said he got like hit in the head with a water bottle.
Yeah, it got a little crazy. It wasn't, yeah. But he saw Green Day, so that's cool.
Yeah, so, but Sam and I are, of course, doing school virtual now. But how is it being a teacher doing the virtual thing?
Yeah.
So the first 2-3 weeks I was crying every day, like literally in tears every single day, because I thought, how am I going to do this? Some of my, the other teachers knew how to do Google Classroom and things like that. And I was still kind of doing things old school with kids, like writing papers and handing them in and stuff. So very quickly I had to learn everything, and so that was, that was really hard. Now I kind of love it. I'm very lucky that I'm teaching 3 electives. I'm teaching a film class, I'm teaching a class on The Walking Dead, and I'm teaching a mysteries class.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So my courses sort of work really well with remote learning, and I finally figured out Google Classroom, and that I can see the kids' papers when they're supposed to be writing, because the kids used to be like, yeah, miss, we're doing it. Yeah, we're doing it. And then now I know I can be like, well, no, you're not, because I'm in your paper right now, And so it took me like a month before I figured that little feature out. And so it's really good. And my kids are becoming better writers, because we're doing a lot of you're probably doing this a lot of one-on-one. And then the thing that I hate the absolute most is that my kids don't turn their screens on. Yeah. And so there's times where I'm just like talking into the black. And I can imagine, I really think if someone did a study on it, that it's psychologically debilitating and damaging to do that, because I'll have to be like, hello, is anybody out there?
But before, my teachers used to tell us to stop talking. Now they ask us to talk.
Exactly. Yes, you're nailing it. Yes. So over vacation, I do guys like use Padlet and Pear Deck and all that. Yeah, you do. Yeah. So over the vacation, I have to learn how to use all those and do it. But, my stuff's pretty basic. You watch something and you write about it, you talk about it, and go from there. So it's not as bad as I thought it was. And I think my kids are getting like a lot of really cool skills, and you probably too, because you got to have time management. You've got to like prioritize, you have to problem solve, so there's and when you go to college, like I also teach at the college level, like this is how you do a lot of stuff. So like, you'll be ready. You know how to, my kids didn't really know how to type and keyboard that well, or even how to set up a, paper, and they know how to do all that stuff now. So there's some good things.
Yeah. I mean, I've always kind of been curious for like the teacher's perspective, because I know Dom can vouch for me too, but like even in classes, I definitely feel like sometimes I'm the only kid with my camera on, and I'm not using that as I'm not trying to use that as a bragging point. I'm just saying it's like it has to get depressing.
It's very depressing. It's very, very depressing. And you not knowing what your kids look like, there's a little thing, a little good point to it maybe too, because you're not judging anybody by how they look, that I would love to say like, oh, I would never do that, but I think, it's a human nature kind of thing. So, so there's a certain part of it that, you're just seeing a name and you're judging somebody purely on what their work product and their contributions to class discussions and stuff. So that's kind of cool too. But man, when I get to, so I'll put kids in the private breakout rooms when they're doing a writing assignment, and then I go in and conference with them, and then they turn their screen on, and then I'm like, oh my God, like there you are. Like, I'll give you an example. So there was this sassy kid that used to hang out kind of in front of my classroom before lockdown, and I would see him and he'd always be like, giving somebody hell, and then he'd see me be like, hi miss, like he'd change his whole demeanor, and I thought he was hilarious. He was so funny. And it was about like a month and a half into school, he turned his camera on, and I was like, oh my God, you're the kid in front of my room like all the time. And he's like, yeah, miss, I thought you knew that. And I said, well, how would I know that? Like, I didn't know your name then, I just knew you as like the sassy kid who hangs in front of my room, and, and so he's like, oh yeah, that's me, and I was like, oh, I love you, because he had a really sharp wit, and I love kids that are funny, so, but you don't know.
I'm not sure if this is just a Baltimore thing or if they use it at Boston schools, but we use Schoology.
Yes, we used to use Schoology, but now we're all Google Classroom. Yeah, we're all.
Okay. We use Schoology for like schoolwork, and then we use Google Meets
Yeah.
for everything.
Oh, okay,
But
yeah.
I would say the craziest part that happened recently was like, you kind of think like as soon as we got to virtual school, we're like, oh man, no more snow days. That's what everybody was thinking. But then our county actually had a ransomware attack.
Oh,
So
I
we were,
heard about that when you were
yeah,
talking to your other. I watched your show with Walter. No, I can't remember who it
Oh
was.
yeah, I think we talked about it with
Yeah,
Walter.
you talked about it with him, and you said like it was like right before Thanksgiving that you guys, yeah,
it
and I
was,
was like,
Yeah, we were supposed to. Okay, so like Thanksgiving week, it was supposed to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then have the rest of that off, and then come back on Monday.
yeah.
So it's just kind of appropriate that it happened on that Wednesday.
yeah, you were really lucky that it did, that it did. We had the same thing happen to us last year, almost like right before the end of the school year.
Wow.
You know, and it's like, to me, you want to target somebody, go target some multi-million-dollar corporation, not a school, not a public school.
Yeah.
We're like, we're struggling enough here. Like, come on, give us a break.
Right. That's what we were saying, because there's even teachers who had to like completely switch from Windows to Google computers.
Yeah.
And like that has been crazy. And of course, as soon as the ransomware is like up and everything's fine, my device for school just stopped working completely. So then I had to improvise more. It's definitely had its challenges, but it can be good in some sense. In like you said, there's no judgment there. And it's so much easier to meet with your teachers now. Like before, it would be like, oh, well, you leave after their class, go to your next one. But now it's like, well, I can talk to you during my lunchtime. I can talk to you at like 5, like, so I think it's cool that there's more flexibility.
That's great that you're saying that, because I'm writing an article, because I do freelance writing, and I'm writing an article on what kids like about remote learning. So Sam, I'm totally stealing that. That's good. But I'll give you full credit. Don't worry.
But at the same time, like you can stay afterwards and you can schedule coach classes and like private stuff.
Right.
At the same time, the most difficult thing that I find is like just communication, because even in school, I was like too scared to go up to teachers and be like, so I got a bad grade on this. Can you help me? But now it's like, now you announce it to everybody.
Yeah, you can't do it privately, and like you just send them an email if you want to.
Well, yeah, I send them an email, but because that's what everybody else is thinking, it gets like lost in their email, and it takes them like 3 days.
They do get flooded.
Yeah.
I was talking to one of my teachers, and he was like, yeah, I get like 150 emails a day, and I'm like, I'm like, no wonder, one got like lost.
Yeah.
It's more difficult because before their messages were kind of isolated to the at-home stuff, and then they read it, responded to you, whatever. But it's like Dom said, it's better for communication and worse for communication. It makes you be a lot more frontal with people, for sure.
And that's good that now that you have to reach out to your teachers, because when you go to college, teachers have what's called office hours, and that's when you're supposed to meet with your professors. When you need help. I had a kid that got accepted to Brown University, and I teach in a low-income urban school. And, he had a little bit of imposter syndrome. He was like, how did I get accepted to Brown, And he started doing poorly, but he was too scared to talk to his teacher, And so you already know that. You already know you've got it. You know how to talk to your teacher and that you have to. So there you go. You've got a college level skill at age 13. That's great. That's good.
Yeah, but like if you want to talk to him in class, you can't put you can't type it in the chat, because then everybody still sees it. You can't say it.
You can do private chat. You can do private chat, right? Yeah.
This is a whole new world.
Yeah, you can do private chat. Yeah, you can do private chat. Yeah, chat privately. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the only other issue is like when you want to talk to them, but like, because we have 10 minutes in between each of our classes, so we'll have like 50-minute class, 10-minute break, 50-minute class. So you can kind of push over a little bit. So sometimes I'll just be like sitting there, and there's like one kid left in the room, and I'm like, leave, I want to talk.
Come on.
Just get out.
Yeah. I'll always say to my kids, like, hang out if you need to talk, and then they do, and then I know they're saying to the like, leave.
Yeah.
For the most part, I really like my teachers for what I can know about them right now. But my math teacher right now, to give you an example of what she does, she like looked at the class average. She was like, "Well, that's not so good." And rather than she doesn't even really like do anything in class other than like post links and stuff. And she saw that the class average wasn't very good. So rather than start teaching, she deleted the lowest the lowest graded tests just to boost the average.
Yeah, that's
So
I remember teachers used to do that when I was in school, but I haven't seen it done like that often anymore. It's kind of an old school technique.
yeah, like
Yeah.
I went to check my grades and like there were these lines through everything.
Yeah. Oh
So
God.
it was weird.
Yeah.
And somebody said something and she was like, "Well, I wanted to make the average look better." I kind of think that like she's doing it to also make herself kind of look better.
True.
So
True. Right.
It's just kind of like, okay
yeah.
then, I guess. So kind of just to switch it up a little bit. This was like a question like for me, just like out of curiosity. So how different do you think your experience growing up in the DC hardcore scene could have been, as a woman compared to like a man?
So I was in the Philly hardcore scene,
Oh,
the Philadelphia hardcore scene. How different was it as a woman as opposed to a man? We were very lucky because we were sort of the first wave of punks. I graduated high school in 1977, so that was like a big year for punk, and I was in Philadelphia, and Philadelphia is a super welcoming, despite our crazy reputation. It's a very friendly, welcoming place, and
yeah.
so I don't think that I really felt any gender discrimination at all as a woman in the punk and hardcore scene in Philadelphia. And I know that my experience is not universal and that many women had, terrible experiences in punk and hardcore, but that wasn't mine. In mine, I was really accepted. I felt like I had, 20, 30 big brothers. And it was super empowering because I felt like, I was one of a few. And so that was kind of cool. And, I had all these people kind of cheering me on. So like we did shows and, like I did stage dives, and I did, things that kind of out of my comfort zone, that I didn't know that I could do, So for me as a woman in the scene, it was super empowering and kind of made me the person that I am today, kind of made me fearless, kind of made me knock down walls to help my students. And, that whole do-it-yourself work ethic sort of still in me, when I need, because my school doesn't have a lot of money, and sometimes they'll just say, well, we can't buy any books, there are no field trips, and I'll be like, oh, hell no. Like my kids are still getting books and my kids are still going on field trips, I just have to raise the money and do it myself, which I'm very lucky. All my punk rock friends and all my high school friends and former students fund all my projects. And so like last year I brought my kids to New York City for the day and we did cool things, and we go to plays and operas and ballets and museums and things like that. That's really, or we used to pre-COVID, so I hope we can get back into it at some point. So yeah, it was empowering.
I think that's great. It was really just like a curiosity thing. So like I'm glad that your answer was on that end of the spectrum and not the other.
Yeah.
But as far as like, teaching goes, I just think, teachers that like care about their students and want to keep them engaged like that, I think are the best kind of teachers. So like thank you for that. But I feel like online there's definitely the teachers that are like trying to keep everybody involved, and then there's the others that are kind of just like giving you the material, which I understand, because even for some teachers I'm sure they're out of their comfort zone with this, like they don't necessarily like sitting in front of a class on a computer. True. So I try to think about it that way too, but I think it definitely has been a situation that's affected everyone. Like there's really nobody that wasn't affected.
Yeah, it really has. And so, that's one thing when people ask me, like, well, why are you a good teacher or whatever? I think it's really because I remember what it's like to be your age. You know, like I can remember being in school, being bored, being disenfranchised, being like angry, you know, and I would sit in the back of the room and be like, oh God, like if I was teaching this class right now, here's what I would do, you know? And so when I create lessons now for my kids, or even electives, you know, I'm like, I want to do something that you will like, and we will have fun, and I will use it as a platform to teach you all kinds of cool things, and we can have fun. Like learning's fun, you know. So I mean, you know, we got to write essays and stuff every once in a while, but like I want them to be on topics that you're interested in and things like that, you know.
Yeah, and like the essays are necessary.
They are, yeah. I always tell my kids, you know, good oral communication and good written communication can get you anything you want. And I have like tons of examples that I show them, you know, like getting my, you know, kid Slipknot tickets, or, you know, getting another kid backstage at Imagine Dragons, you know, that's written communication skills, that's oral communication skills. Like I got a kid who was very sick, who lived in Philadelphia, but he was a Patriots fan, you know. I got his favorite player to like talk to him and send him a package of stuff, you know. Again, written communication skills, networking, like it's all that. So it's important, you know. And when you tell kids stories like that, like it's not like algebra, you know, like where you say like, when am I going to ever use this again, you know? And I remember I had a teacher tell me about algebra. They're like, you solve for X every day, Nancy. You're solving for X. Like you can't find your shoes, and you're like doing an equation in your head to figure out what. I was like, okay, like I will accept that as an answer, you know?
Yeah, I mean, math, especially online, has, you know, as Dominic kind of touched on, it's really been back and forth. Like there's that one lesson that you're like, man, this makes sense, I got this, and then the next one you're like, I don't know what I'm doing.
I can't even imagine.
I love word problems, but when there's just an equation, not into that.
Yeah. I don't know how you do it, because the math that you guys are learning is much harder than what I had to learn in school. I was a terrible math student, you know, and I didn't have real good teachers for math. So that made it even worse. Even to this day, you know, like I can just barely balance my budget, and, you know, and that's it. My husband's an engineer, so he's you know, he's a math guy. And back when he was in college for engineering, I would type his papers for him. And I'd be like, is this an 8 or a 5? And he'd be like, just read the equation. You can figure out what it, I was like, if you think I know what this means, like, I have no idea. So, you know, I'm not a math person. I'm an English person.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with both, but I would say, you know, English is like my favorite. I enjoy that a lot more because, like you said, I see the purpose behind it every time I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And I just enjoy it. Like reading takes you to another world, and writing can, you know, help you make one. It's just creative, I think, is cool.
Like that.
Yeah. And I've had some like awesome ELA teachers. So it's just been like, so yeah, ELA is cool because
I like that.
Like they set the example.
Yeah, you're probably just saying that, but yeah, I like that.
I mean, it totally depends on the teacher too. Like you can really hate a subject, and a teacher can make you love it, and vice versa. Like if you're really into something, you can have a teacher you don't like and you just don't click with, and it makes you hate the subject. So I think, as far as you were talking about like the do-it-yourself learning, people need to remember that, you know, just kind of remember, especially while everyone's at home, you know, time management is very important.
Yeah, and like for math, I haven't had the greatest math teachers, so I think that they've just like put a bad taste in my mouth.
I can see that, where that could happen. How about, have you ever tried to go to Khan Academy and done? I'm sure they probably push you over to Khan Academy sometimes, right? No. So the next time you're having like trouble with like fractals or something, I don't know any math terms, you know, go on Khan Academy and type fractals. And what they do is they have like, you know, the best teachers in the world, they'll teach you fractals, you know, right? It's, you know, it's in, I think it's free, you know, through the College Board. So yeah, you can just log on and figure, if you can't learn something from your teacher, just go on it's KHAN Academy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I have seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, and then you have a really good teacher making it, so.
Yeah, I think that's in like our instructional tools part of BCPS, but we can't get to that right now because
Okay.
because of the ransomware thing, they had to like get a whole new system, and then they're trying.
Yeah, they had to get like shortcuts to go to things.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, you may be able to find it on YouTube if you really need to. So
yeah.
let me know. Send me an email if you can't find it. I'll give you.
Okay.
I'll figure out how to. I'll get you in.
But I loved the very beginning of your book where a student was like, "You were a punk."
Yeah.
Yeah, that was that's because I kept it a secret, when I first started out. My husband was in a band in the mid 90s called Gauge, and it's kind of a different band. It was like kind of more rock, more heart, like more about songs, and all my students really liked the band, so they would come and see them when they did all ages shows and stuff. And it's kind of weird, sometimes seeing my kids there, but my kids are really cool. So that was neat, but I never really told about my punk rock past until that kid outed me in AP class. And so, that's kind of wild. And I was like, wow, do I confirm or deny? Like, what do I say here? So I just was like, yeah. I was figuring, they're gonna find out sooner or later. So I just was like, yeah, it was the best time of my life, and now my students, I don't have any punk rock students in my classes. There's like a handful maybe in the past 10 years. My kids like hip hop and techno and things like that. So I think they just appreciate the fact that like I wrote a book, that I did cool things back in the day, that I kind of looked kind of crazy, that I stood up to the KKK, like that kind of thing. They like that kind of a thing. They may not be to the music, but it gives you a little street cred, and the fact that I know some like cool people, they think that that's neat,
Yeah, I think they kind of would more so, even if they didn't understand the music, like you said, they appreciate the message behind what you did and what you were part of. Exactly. Which is sometimes more important.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, my kids are great. I always have, I don't really even, I always worry the older I get, like, am I still going to be able to build these kind of relationships with my students, because I don't look like my students, I'm old, so I usually tell stories in the beginning about former students, and then it hooks them right in, and then they realize that I'm somebody that cares about them, and then you build relationships and you go from there.
I forgot what I was gonna say. But on Facebook, I've been seeing Al keep posting about 2024. So is it just like a joke, or is it
Al?
It's not a joke, but it's a stretch goal because my back is so messed up. I just felt that felt the timing was right, possibly, to see if I could challenge myself and challenge the band to see if we could possibly get back to that point. So there's a lot of steps in between to get to that point. That I've kind of mapped out, and we're going to give it our best shot. So it's not a joke, but I guess the thing is, we don't want to be a joke, so we got to make sure that we're not a joke. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
I guess the best way is, if you see it, then it was meant to happen, and we passed certain kind of checks that we put in place. If you don't see it, either I couldn't regain my health, or a million other things could happen. One of us could die or something. But if we don't do it, it's because it was not going to be good. So we'll see.
All right, go get it.
Well, thank you. Well, thank
there
you.
You go.
Yeah, thank you for our first-hand answer.
Yeah, there. That's the real answer right there. So you got it right from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
Well, Nancy, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, absolutely. You guys are great. I love what you're doing. You know, you make me proud. You give me hope for the future, you know, so keep doing it, you know.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you so much for talking to us. This was
Thank
amazing.
you.
You betcha. All right, keep in touch.
Absolutely.
Yeah.